Hello and welcome to a very special press start preview for Star Wars Outlaws. We recently sent our very own Harry over to the States, to LA specifically, to get his hands on nearly 5 hours, I believe, of Ubisoft's upcoming open world Star Wars, which is pretty massive. And so, along with obviously all the written content we've got, I wanted to get you on here, Harry, to chat about what you did over there, what you played, what stood out. And we've also got Shannon, who has also played a smaller portion of the game back at Summer Game Fest as well. So a little bit of insider knowledge for us. But yeah, I guess, first of all, how are you both?
Good, thanks. Excited to talk about some Star Wars.
Cool.
Likewise.
Very good. Harry, firstly, to kick us off, give us a brief idea of what went down in your time in LA. What was this preview all about? What part of the game did you get to play?
So I got to play, it totaled about 4.5 hours altogether. It was meant to be 4, but I think we just were running on time. There were two segments that we played. So the first one was on Tashara, which is the new planet that has been developed in collaboration between Lucasfilm and Massive. So it's like a brand new planet to the IP, specifically designed for Outlaws. We were on Tashara for about 3 hours altogether. And this was like from a very early part of the game. I want to say it was in the first sort of 45 minutes that we started playing. And we got to do a couple of story missions, and there was open world free roam stuff there as well. And then the second part that we played was, I think, after like the Tashara leg of the campaign, on another planet called Kijimi, which is from episode 9. And that was a much more linear section. We only got to play for about an hour. That had a story mission as well. And then there was also some like limited free roam stuff within Kijimi itself.
Cool. And I guess we'll go in depth on a lot of that very shortly. But to give me a sense of the scope of the demo, like that first area on Tashara, did you kind of just have free reign to sort of roam around and do what you liked there?
Yeah, pretty well. Once we did the like introductory mission, you get your speeder, and we could do whatever we wanted. The first 2 missions were set like in Miragana, which is like Tashara's main city. And then the third one actually takes you into Tashara's orbit, to like an Imperial fueling station. So there was quite a bit of visual range even just in that like first 3 hours. And like Tashara's outskirts in comparison to the city itself, like Miragana, is very different. So yeah, there was a lot covered. But yeah, like we did, as long as you weren't in those campaign missions during the Tashara portion, we could just go and explore whenever we wanted.
Just, I know we'll talk about it, but like, how did it feel Ubisofty? Because obviously we got to play like 3 very small vertical slices, no open world stuff. So yeah, if you were put in front of it with no knowledge, like, would you know it was a Ubisoft game based on sort of what you were doing?
In some ways, yeah, but it also doesn't have a lot of things that I think you would expect when you talk about Ubisoft open world games. Like, I don't think there were any like towers or anything of that ilk. The meaty open world stuff, intel chains, which I'm sure we'll get into those, but they're basically you just like following clues along from, maybe you overhear a piece of conversation in a cantina or something, and you're sort of strung along through the open world until you reach the end point of whatever that is. So it's less of like the checklisty stuff, and it does feel a bit more like tailored and narrative driven in terms of like what you can find in the open world.
It's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. So would you say like more of the reward for exploring is, for the Star Wars fans to really kind of get into the lore and stuff, more so than like find 10 of these and you'll get a new hat? Like,
definitely that, but you do get like cool rewards for doing this as well. Like Kay has gear she can equip that will give her perks in and out of combat. One of the intel chains I did on Tashara led to me finding an expert, which is like a whole separate system where you can basically gain perks for different parts of Kay's skill set. So the expert I found was in relation to the speeder. So what that let me do was unlock new things to do with the speeder, which is cool. So yeah, there's a bit of both, but there's definitely like an underlying sense of like you want to explore these worlds as Star Wars fans to see. And this was even just on Tashara, which is a new world. So I'm really interested to see how they bring that into like Tatooine and Akiva and stuff. There's like a virtual tourism element almost in how big the world is and what you can find.
That's cool. And I guess like one of the big things that it seems like Ubisoft has been touting since they first announced this is kind of like the seamlessness of that as well. Did you get a sense like riding around on the speeder and going to different areas and I guess traveling like that it is as seamless as it looks?
On the planet itself, absolutely. It goes from a lot of different visual like motifs in a lot of short, like a very short amount of time. There's another area on Tashara that is like an underground wind tunnel that the Empire has set up, and they've like shut it off, and they're no longer using the wind. So when you're going through there's all this wind and stuff, and it's very Empire-y underneath the surface. And then when you head into orbit from a planet as well, that is quite seamless. Like, you aren't in control of the ship. It's effectively a short cutscene, but the load times are so fast that you don't really notice that you're loading into like a new area that is effectively the planet's orbit. So yeah, but when you're like boots on the ground exploration, it's all very seamless, like very obviously making the most of the SSDs and things like that in the consoles. It feels next gen in that sense, which is cool. Well, current gen, I guess now, but.
Do you how did you find like exploring the towns and everything as well? Like, do those places feel very lived in and dynamic?
They do.
Is, I guess what people are hoping for.
Yeah, I actually found myself getting like not lost, because there's obviously a map that you can open at any point, but it does feel more organically designed in a way that is like it's less handholdy, I guess, which I think lends to the sense of like the criminal underbelly and the chaos that's going on in this time in the Star Wars timeline. Like at least on Miragana anyway, there's quite a strong Empire presence. So there are like security checkpoints set up with stormtroopers monitoring citizens. They're like scanning people as they're coming through into the like night market district and things like that. And like people hang around the cantina. There's a lot of unsavory types, and like it's cool to just hang around, and you can overhear people say things about the world and what's happening. That was one element that was really cool, was that you can hear things in cantinas or on the streets. We didn't really get to see this much in the demo, but they did show us in a panel. Like, you can hear someone say in Tatooine that like there's an Imperial freighter transporting some cargo over Kijimi, and you can go into Kijimi's orbit and you'll be able to find that freighter, and you can hit it yourself for that stuff. So that's really cool. Like, I think that lends a sense of authenticity to the world, and plays into the scoundrel fantasy that Massive are trying to build up for the game.
How big is, like, would you say that the planet was compared to like Jedi Survivor, which like was kind of tried to be open in how the planets were structured, but I don't know, it didn't feel that open compared to some other big games?
I would say in structure, it feels very open. Like, you can go in all four directions and not, like in all directions and not worry about like running into a wall, or like it doesn't sort of thread you through like Survivor does.
Yeah.
So they're more open in that sense. In terms of size, it's hard to say, because I feel like Survivor's size is sort of artificially increased by how long it takes to get from one side of the map to the other. Yeah. On the speeder, you can get from one end of Tashara to the other pretty quick, like, but the speeder does go pretty quick when you've upgraded it. And Tashara is also one of 5 planets, I think. So if even just the other 3 outside of Kijimi have an open world space that size, it's going to be pretty sizable.
Sounds huge.
Massive,
I guess. And I guess like talking about the worlds and those different syndicates and stuff, like what was your impression out of what you played of the story and the narrative, and how that sort of plays out with that extra freedom?
This is probably the thing that we got to see the least, maybe because it was so early on. But it did feel very like it's laid on very thick, the whole like criminal underbelly, like scoundrel fantasy, which I think is really cool. It's like, at least in the early portion where we're on Tashara, it's pretty clear that Kay and Nyx are like out of their element. Like, they're not quite familiar, even if they have engaged in this like this trade before, this sort of business that they're in. On Miragana, or in Miragana on Tashara, they're very much out of their element. Like, they're outsiders. They haven't really made a name for themselves. And And it is you do just like get a really good sense for their relationship and that they've been together for a long time, and you want to see them succeed because of that. So I think when you have like interactions between them and these like, we get to see one thing where they go up to a Pike Syndicate underboss for work, and he basically dismisses them. You want to see them succeed in that moment, and find their way off planet to freedom from the Empire and things like that. So yeah, obviously the big hook that's at the start of the game we didn't get to see, but I think it does a really good job of like pulling you over to Kay and Nyx's side and wanting you to root for them.
Yeah, and with that element of like, I guess there are narrative choices and stuff to be made, or maybe not narrative choices, but like in where your allegiances lie and stuff. Does that sort of syndicate system feel robust? Is it more of just like a cosmetic thing, or is it going to have like far-reaching consequences, do you think?
I don't think it's going to have far-reaching consequences in the main campaign, in terms of like how the story unfolds. I think it is preset, but it does feel like it has quite a bit of an impact on how you approach things from like a gameplay perspective, and the way that you handle things in those main story missions as well. So like, as an example, the second mission that I had to do, I needed a part to repair something on Kay's ship, and it had to be stolen from one of the 2 syndicate bases in Miragana. And at this point, you've made a decision on who to give some info to in the prior mission. So you're either going to be in good standings or bad standings with either syndicate. If you go to the good one to steal this part, you can just enter their territory and they won't bat an eyelid at you because you're in good standings with them. So it makes it easier in that sense. So it's cool to see how it can shape the way that you might approach an objective. And I do think that it does, even if you don't see it in the main story, it does a good job of like wanting you to make a decision that's going to be best for Kay and Nyx, as opposed to just like pledging loyalty to one syndicate the whole way through.
Nice. And what was your vibe on I guess talking about playing the missions themselves, what was your vibe on the combat and the like basic gameplay mechanics?
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I think Massive's like work on The Division really shines through in a lot of the shooting here. It feels different, but like it feels really scrappy in a good way. Like usually that's a word that you would use to describe something that you don't enjoy as much. But I think here it really plays to the strengths of the game and the fantasy that it's trying to create. Like it feels really cool to take pot shots and make use of like hazards in the environment, and like using Nyx in combat and things like that as well. And the way that the missions that we did at least were structured, felt really well paced. Like they use a little bit of everything. So that was cool. It feels like, yeah, sorry.
Go on, finish it.
It feels like it sort of dips into every aspect of what the game is trying to do. And so that's cool.
I guess, yeah, when I played it, sort of that was probably the area I was least confident in. Again, it was only 3 missions, but just coming off Jedi Survivor that had like 4 different saber types, like you had a blaster in that. Again, I don't think we know everything about this, and you probably know more than me, but that was my one thing of like, if this is a 30-hour game, like is that just having a blaster, is that going to be enough with different modules? So I don't know, like you played it for longer and played different bits, so
yeah. I can also see this being an issue, and it's hard for me to say as well. We had access to 2 blaster modules.
I think it was the same, yeah.
Like the default one and one that overloads droids.
Yeah.
And I think they said there's 4. So I don't know how drastically differently they behave, like the other ones that we didn't get to use and things like that. Yeah, I will admit that like across 40 hours, I don't know if it will hold up the whole way, but it really depends on how much these other blaster variants are changed. And you can use like enemy weapons as well. Like you can send Nyx, or you can pick them up like actual blasters. They're like one-time consumable weapons, so you use them to run out of ammo and you can drop them. So there's that at least. But yeah, not sure if like you can upgrade the blaster as well. So there's that too.
Yeah, it was fun. I think, like you said, like it felt good. I think it's just, again, coming from Survive, like, and lightsabers being such a prominent part of
for sure
most Star Wars games. It's just, yeah, not that every game needs that, but I hope there's some variety in there along the way.
Yeah.
Is there like, a lot of, I guess, comparing it again to Survivor, is there a lot of like climbing and exploration kind of stuff, or is it a bit more?
Yeah, there's a much less of a focus on platforming. There definitely is still some of it though, like especially in the missions, like you're climbing on walls to progress, and like Kay has a grappling hook that she can use as well. So that's cool. It is much less of a focus than it is in Survivor though. So yeah.
And Nyx obviously is a useful companion. What's like? How did you find that he factors into like how you approach gameplay?
I think Nyx is like, it was difficult to start using him at first because it just wanted to shoot things and sort of ignore it. But Nyx has like a whole button dedicated to him where it sort of slows down time and you can send him out to do whatever it is you want him to do. That ranges from like, he can distract guards in stealth, he can attack enemies, he can go grab a gun for you, he can activate like environmental hazards like explosive barrels and things like that. So once you get into like the flow of it and the habit of it, he becomes like part of Kay's toolset. And I think if you if you try to just rely on Kay only and you don't use Nyx, it can be quite overwhelming. Like you're just going to get hit from all sides, and you need to make use of him properly to sort of come out on top in a lot of the shootouts. So yeah, it does become second nature once you start getting used to it. But yeah, he feels pretty pivotal in how you approach like all gameplay situations. That's
cool. I guess that hopefully will add a little bit more flavor than if the blaster isn't cutting it, to have sort of like that extra mechanic. Is there anything else like notable about what you played that you feel is worth calling out before we begin to wrap up?
I do think that like the stealth is a bit odd. Like it does feel good once you understand how it works and you're using Nyx, but it does this weird thing in like, there was the first mission that we had to do and the third, you could not get detected at all. And if you did, you just got booted back to like the start of enemy territory. So instead of it just like initiating combat or like, you know, you getting your chance to smooth talk out of it kind of thing, you just get booted back to the start of the area and you just have to re-stealth through it all, which just felt a bit like jarring.
I think we had a moment like that too, where it just, like obviously stealth is a part of the game because you've only got a blaster, but then, like if you fail stealth in other areas, you just get shot. But then this part was like you just fail, which a lot of stealth games do, but
to be fair, they do, yeah.
The worst parts of like stealth.
Yeah, so I'm unsure how like that will go down. And I will say that the ship combat is really cool as well. The stuff you get to do in orbit, when you're flying around a planet's orbit, exploring in your ship, that is all really cool. It's not obviously at the level of like Star Wars Squadrons, but they've done a good job of like making it feel good.
Was the speeder fun? Like that was obviously something.
Yeah, I really liked the speeder. It was weird to control at first on mouse and keyboard, but once I got it, it has like a real weight to it. Like when you're turning and stuff, and it gets really fast. Like once you unlock upgrades and you can get like a booster, you can eventually unlock like a bunny hop ability and stuff. So there's plenty you can do with it. It feels really cool.
Yeah, do you think there were going to be like speeder races or like trick competitions?
I wouldn't be surprised if there were races. Like Tashara itself has so many ramps that you can drive up and stuff. Actually, I think there was a speeder race that I seem to recall in my gameplay. I went past someone who was talking about a speeder race, so I think they are a thing. Yeah.
Cool. Shannon, is there anything else you wanted to add or ask before I
don't think so. I'm still keen for it. I think, like I mentioned, the open world stuff I'm really keen to explore, especially after you've spoken about how it differs. The combat, I think it'll be fine just to get through the game. So I'm keen for it. I'm keen for something different in Star Wars world.
Harry, as someone who hasn't really immersed themselves much in Star Wars universe, do you think that I will still get something out of this?
I think so. I think it has a sort of a broad appeal in the way that like an Uncharted game does. It's kind of what it feels like, a little bit in terms of like overall gameplay loop, like the stealth and the shooting and the climbing and things like that. And I think it being set in between episodes means you don't really need to know much other than like the Empire is at the peak of their power. I think there's something here for people who aren't as into Star Wars. Obviously, there's going to be a lot for people who are, because you get to explore these planets like non-linearly, and you know you've got Tatooine and Akiva and things like that as well. But generally, if you like open world action adventure games, this will probably tick some boxes for you. So
Cool. Well, I'm excited. It comes out on August 29th?
28th or
28th?
29th.
Better double check that before I...
The last few days of August.
Yeah, it's at the end of August.
Yeah.
And Harry, I know we discussed this earlier. 30th of August, there we go. Did you want to do a cute little rapid fire listing off of your top 5 favorite things coming out of the demo?
Yeah.
right.
I think my number 1 would have to be Nick's, just because he's very cute. Second would be the shooting. Just really like the way that felt. 3 would be the speeder. 4 would be how well they've like created these worlds, especially Kojimi. And 5 would be, I think the reputation system with the different syndicates and stuff. I'm keen to do more with that.
Sweet. All right. Well,
Sold.
thanks for your time, both of you. Yeah, excited to read more. You can go and check out all of Harry's coverage, all of our previous coverage as well, over on the Press Start website. And obviously look forward to our full review closer to launch. But yeah, thanks both of you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.